Hope you're all really well. Today I would really love to talk to you about menopause, and again I have stolen Pete from the clinic because I feel like this is again kind of quite a hot topic at the moment and something that I've been thinking about. So I am about to be 36. I would say when I was in my mid-20s I had no idea about the menopause. It wasn't discussed, it wasn't something that was ever spoken about. And now with social media there's kind of a lot more conversation around it, which is amazing. But it still seems to focus on, you've hit the menopause, let's deal with it now. Whereas I feel like I would like to know, what can we start doing earlier to help make that transition as kind of painless as possible? And is there anything that we can be doing now to make that any easier?
There is, yes. And it's quite an interesting thing that you kind of mentioned that, because I remember kind of one of my clinical educators that did our basically female health module, and she was basically saying that you needed she wished she got her clients 10 years before they came to see her, in order to kind of fully prepare them for the transition from going from the reproductive into the post-reproductive years. And I kind of thought at the time, I was like, 10 years of kind of preparation time, like what on earth kind of do we need to do in those 10 years? But really kind of having seen it on the ground and worked with kind of many clients who, again, similar to other things, it's not necessarily their primary thing that they're coming to see me for, but they're having a very difficult time. And obviously the menopause is making their symptoms of other things kind of considerably worse than they might need to be. But it's that kind of, let's say, the chicken and the egg about what actually is the real cause. And often it's the underlying issue that's creating the transition through to menopause much more difficult. So it's definitely something that, as Alice said, and it's not something that was widely spoke about before, but it definitely needs to be something that women need to plan for well in advance, really.
What can we do?
Well, it's same as everything, really. It's about kind of finding out about your system. And, I guess many of my clients that come to see me are actually already in the menopause, and it definitely makes it a lot more challenging once you're in the menopause. Not that it's too late to do anything, that's not the case.
Yeah, don't let that put you off
at all.
Do the things.
But it makes it more challenging, and many people are throwing all the herbs at it that are kind of recommended for different things. And whilst there are kind of some general off-the-shelf herbs like Agnus castnus, raspberry leaf, kind of black chastery, all of those sorts of things,
they're all like the Googleable ones.
Yeah, evening primrose oil, kind of borage oil, all of that. They can certainly help. But most of, let's say, my clients have already thrown the kind of kitchen sink at it with that and still having kind of really, really significant symptoms. And for me, it's kind of when we look at the most important thing about, I say, hormone balance throughout the reproductive years and the post-reproductive years. And it's not to kind of take away the importance of the ovum and the uterus for that, but it's looking at the other organs that are involved with that, such as the adrenal glands and the liver health, and also the health of the digestive system and the microbiome. And pretty much everyone that I see doesn't have an issue with just one of those things. They have an issue with all three of those things. And if we're looking at the regulation of the hormones, it's the adrenal glands that are responsible for creating what we call the precursor hormones. So they're the hormones that will then get converted into the reproductive hormones. And in the kind of functional medicine world, there's this big term that we kind of use, which is called the pregnenolone steal.
Sure. What's that?
Yeah. And in the medical world, that doesn't exist. I'm kind of going to admit that kind of now. And it's the viewpoint that the adrenals will just make as much pregnenolone as it needs. But if your adrenal glands are under a lot of stress and they are maybe becoming a little bit deficient, tired, whatever term we want to use, or that they're not getting enough nutrients that they need to be able to kind of create all of the pregnenolone that they need to support both the cortisol pathway and the reproductive hormone pathway, then because the critical pathway is the stress pathway, because if we don't have the right amount of stress hormone in our bodies for what our bodies are calling for, that's a threat to our existence. And it's actually it's kind of what we call an absolutely essential hormone, whereas the reproductive hormones aren't. It's kind of, if we are facing a threat to our existence, why are we going to choose to balance our sexual hormones over our stress hormones? We're just not going to do that. So it's about kind of balancing the adrenal glands, trying to reduce the stress as much as possible. But as we said, is that stress can only be reduced so much from an environmental perspective, because we have lives that we need to live. And it's about kind of finding out the hidden stresses once again inside, and whether that be the gut, the immune system, the metabolic pathways, all of those sorts of things. Focusing on improving your liver health as much as you possibly can. And again, that's kind of interlinked. We're exposed to kind of so many environmental toxins as well, especially for women. You get such a rough ride of it, really, with many of the chemicals that are kind of utilized so readily in our foods and in kind of skincare products today. Personal care products. Yes. I've kind of just done a bit of research into a course that I'm kind of currently writing on the amount of chemicals that women are exposed to every day. And I obviously knew it was bad, but I was actually shocked when I saw the true statistics. And I think Alice will kind of speak to you about that at another time. But when we're looking at so many of them being what we call endocrine disruptors, which are hormone disruptors, that kind of imbalancing the estrogen progesterone levels and all of that sort of stuff. So but it's about taking the burden off the liver, and as we're saying, all of those chemicals that we're putting into our systems, whether it be through not having the correct food, or let's say the correct skincare products, environmental toxins from polluted air, all of that sort of stuff, whether it be from in the home, out the home, etc., are loading up our liver and our kidneys, and it kind of reduces the effect or the ability that the liver has to kind of correctly detox and kind of metabolize the hormones. And also from like a detox perspective, is our gut biome is so important. There are microbes in there that are what we call estrogen receptive, and that means that if there's estrogen present, it stimulates their growth and their survival. So it's kind of wanting to maybe keep the balance of estrogen progesterone in their favor, keeping estrogen relatively high in comparison to progesterone, and it can affect the detoxification of those hormones from the liver, but then also kind of create greater reabsorption from the gut as well. So it's kind of, that cycle is kind of constantly ongoing, and it's just trying to kind of balance all of those things and reduce the burden on the liver, improve the gut health, take the stress off the adrenal glands, and working on things like hypothalamus, pituitary axis as well, which are basically governing all of those things, into trying to consider them the what do you call it, the of an orchestra. Conductor, yeah, of an orchestra. So they're trying to conduct all those pathways, and it's the everything else, or the, like we say, the orchestra, and the hypothalamus and the pituitary is the conductor.
So how old would we be when we need to start thinking about preparing our bodies for menopause?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously we're kind of seeing so much in the way of teenage as well, hormone disruption.
Yeah.
So for me, it's kind of...
So in that respect, like,
it's important.
Girls are starting their menstrual cycles earlier. It's affecting boys as well from endocrine disruptors in the environment. Everything is being brought forward, which is quite scary.
And it's kind of, I'm seeing, teenagers, 20-year-olds with, kind of really altered hormone cycles, kind of severe kind of symptoms from endometriosis, PCOS, all of that sort of stuff. So that cycle for them has already started, and it's about kind of trying to, the earlier you start, the better.
So really, we just, whatever stage of life we're in, we need to be working on getting our body as balanced as possible.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things. It's never too late, despite what we've been saying. But the more balanced the body is, the more balanced the hormones will be throughout your life, really.
I do feel like women who are currently going through menopause and who have been through it were definitely dealt a bad card, because it was such a taboo subject. So I don't think people need to suffer in silence anymore. But I did want to ask about the effect on mental health. Obviously, I know it's all interlinked, but the kind of the rage that people get, and yeah, just this like flipping from feeling like themselves to not really understanding the person. I know in traditional Chinese medicine that the liver is obviously associated with anger. So would that be that the liver is under kind of so much stress trying to deal with all the hormones and all the toxins and all the stuff that's going on, that it's causing that issue?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of one of those things that do we really know exactly what the kind of cause is, because so many of these things are so intertwined. And obviously it's kind of things around bloating, often at kind of coming up to period times, that can be a significant kind of indicator to let someone know that they're due on, as well as the fatigue and, like you say, the kind of anger, the emotion changes, those sorts of things. They're all kind of so widely interlinked, and what's actually happening between the orchestration of all of those organs is we kind of don't really know what the exact cause is. But I would definitely agree, like liver is an anger that's associated in traditional Chinese medicine. When we're kind of doing detoxes with people from, kind of a very immune-based perspective as well, if we're pushing on the liver too hard, definitely one of the symptoms that they would get would be anger, would be the hot kind of flushes, those sorts of things. And especially it's the time of day, if we link that into the traditional Chinese medicine, that most of the time that women are experiencing the hot flashes at night is definitely kind of more in liver to gallbladder time. And for me, it's kind of actually the gallbladder is so essential to all of this, and particularly for women that have had maybe their hormones out of balance for their kind of life journey, really, because if they have, like we say, we're not necessarily talking about high estrogen levels when we say estrogen dominance. We're talking about the level of estrogen in relative terms to progesterone. Estrogen is a bile thinner, whereas estrogen is a bile thickener, whereas progesterone is a bile thinner. So if you've got more estrogen relative to progesterone, it thickens bile flow, and that's a detox pathway for the liver. So once it's dealt with all of its stuff, it stores it in the gallbladder, and then as we eat a kind of fatty meal, that fat will be digested through the bile, and then obviously we'll detoxify all of those toxic kind of elements that were stored in the gallbladder by binding it up in the fibre of our food, and when we go to the bathroom, out it goes. So that's kind of a big kind of pathway for me, and bile ducts, gallbladder are kind of really, really key, because if they are sluggish, the ability for the liver to do its job then is kind of vastly reduced.
Rubbish. I think that's everything. Do you have anything else you want to say, menopause related?
I think it's, like we say, just to kind of recap really, is it's never too late, but it's always kind of important to start the journey as soon as possible, especially if you are already having kind of signs and symptoms of the hormones being a bit dysregulated. And the sooner you kind of correct what's causing that, the less it becomes a problem. And I think kind of also kind of coming back, we're seeing such a broad range now of ages when women might start to enter the menopause. And really, like, if we're saying what is menopause, it's the exact, it's one day where you haven't had a period for one year. But obviously it's that kind of transition through, and that for some people can be drawn out over many years, 10-15 years. For some people it can almost happen overnight, really. So it's just not knowing what your journey might be. The best kind of, I say, line of defense to protect yourself against it is just to kind of sort the kind of balance of the body out, and be as healthy as you can. But it's the same for absolutely everything with that.
Cool. Hope that helps. And if you want to see Pete, you can see him in Norfolk or in London. And if you want to come for lovely holistic facials and sound things, then I'm next door as well. Hope that helps. Bye.